Josephine. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Good to see you again. Yeah, just a little curiosity, how's your week been?
Oh, so-so.
So. Nothing much has happened in your week?
Oh, busy, but, you know, a few ups and downs.
So, with those ups and downs, did you manage to do your 5-part model that we went over last week?
Oh, yeah, well, I had a go, you know, but it's, I mean, it's just so, my life's so busy, it's hard to find time, you know.
Well, so you had a go at it?
I did have a go, yeah.
What was that over?
Oh, just, I was doing a bit of a talk at our team meeting, and I found myself getting anxious and beforehand. So, yeah, I tried to think about it and use that model when I got home and try to think about what was going on for me.
How did it work for you?
Well, it was quite interesting looking at the different areas and thinking, realising how I was actually feeling, rather than, like, I found once I kind of broke it down a little bit, like that model does, I don't know, it somehow helped get a handle on things rather than it totally overwhelming me, you know.
Okay.
It was interesting noticing, thinking about how I felt in my body, and trying to think the thoughts that I was thinking, which perhaps I hadn't really noticed before, you know.
And so sort of that dissipated a lot more quickly than how you were feeling after you'd done that?
Well, I don't know how to say a lot more quickly, but yeah, I felt as if, well, there was something in it, you know, that, yeah, it would be worth doing again.
Okay. And then ups and downs, sort of you mentioned, sort of a few ups and downs, sort of tell us about some of those.
Oh, well,
Let's start with the ups.
the ups.
The ups.
The ups are, in part of my job, I get to introduce families to a caregiver who can provide respite care for their child. And that's a real big up. That's just about the most satisfying part of my job. And for instance, I had a mum who's pregnant with twins and has got 6 kids already, and has her eldest boy is on the spectrum and with severely challenging behaviour, and she's just delighted that I was able to match her up with a caregiver, and because I just know what a huge difference it's going to make in her life and in her son's life to have some special time, and so I find that hugely satisfying. Yeah.
And so you find it satisfying. Why do you find it satisfying, and why does it give you so much of a buzz?
Because it's really meaningful. It's something that's really making a difference in people's lives. You know, it's really making a difference for that mum, because she needs a little bit of help and some time out. But it also makes a difference for the child, giving a positive time out where he can get some one-to-one attention in the busyness of this family, you know, and just providing that service on a regular basis, like once a fortnight, being able to be part of setting that whole thing up, knowing that, you know, that providing that service could potentially be keeping that family together. You know, without that help, the family could fall apart under the stress. So many families with a child with disabilities or added challenges don't stay together because the pressures are just enormous. And so, yeah.
But inside you get a really good feeling within yourself.
Yeah, I do.
And so you've had some good things happen this week. And the downs?
Oh well, The downs are always kind of related to self-doubt, I suppose, and like when I have good experiences, I feel so good, and I know I've done a good job, and that makes me feel really good. But then, as soon as there's some downside and some negative stuff going on, then I don't know, all that stuff, all that positive stuff gets wiped away, and straight away I'm thinking, am I any good at my job? And does everybody think I'm stupid? Stuff like that, you know? And that, who do I think I am to be trying to do something, you know?
So that's quite interesting. Sort of, there's sort of two things going on there that I've got. Is at certain times you feel total self-worth, and then at other times, and then you put a word on it, negative things happening, that your self-worth seems to disappear and go out. And so, what's this negative things that are sort of going, or makes you think negative, that it's negative?
I just kind of, you know, start feeling anxious and thinking that, being afraid that people will find me out for being stupid, and that people think I'm stupid, that I shouldn't be doing the job that I'm doing. And it's like sometimes I can fool people and pretend that, you know, I can fool them into thinking I'm quite clever and good at my job. But then when the negative stuff happens, it just all comes crashing down.
Sort of like, give us an example of the negative stuff.
Well, as soon as someone questions, or like when I deal with the house parents that I work with, if something goes wrong there, and they might make a complaint about me, or so like for instance this week we had the review of the house parents, and I mean it went all right, but I could tell that there was something not happening right between myself and the house parents, and when I was speaking they were shutting down, and their body language was avoiding me, and especially the guy was avoiding eye contact, and there wasn't any. Well, for start off, when my managers were there and was asking the house parents how things had been going for them in these first 6 months, they never said one word about me being helpful to them in any way at all. In fact, didn't comment on my input whatsoever. And so despite all the work that I put into them over the 6 months, and trying to support them and trying to train them and educate them around certain things, and yet it's like it was all for nothing, and because none of it was acknowledged. And even some of the things that we've implemented together, and I've worked really hard to bring these guys on board with me in terms of making some changes and raising standards of practice, yet when they were talking as if they had implemented all these things, and there was not even any recognition that actually it was, you know, done in partnership with me, and actually I was the instigator of it, but not so much that I was the instigator, just that not even any recognition that I was part of that, as if they'd done it all on their own. And then the following day I found out from my immediate line manager that the guy had texted her and said, oh, I've just heard that Josephine's coming to the review meeting. And so my manager said, yes, that's correct. And the guy texted my manager and said, oh, well, it's just that I won't be able to be as open as I'd like to be, you know, if she's there. And so obviously he has some issues with me, which I've no idea what that is. And so yeah, there I am thinking I've done such a great job these last 6 months with these people, and obviously they don't think that, you know, and so it just leaves me thinking, well, one, I've been stupid because I've obviously missed the signs that there's something going on for them that I've not realised. And two, I've obviously not done such a great job in bringing them with me and training them and getting them on board as I thought I had. So, yeah, so much for teamwork, and yeah, it's just like all my efforts in vain, really. And in the meantime, I feel it's invalidating my role, really, invalidating my work, and in front of my managers, basically, yeah, no validation of any of my input, so as if I've done nothing.
So you put a lot of work into preparing and going and putting work into these people and trying to get them up to what you see as the professional standards. And then on that, you was also saying, like, on the ups of setting the right people up and everything like that as caregivers. You put the same amount of work on. And so, where's what you see as the difference between the work you put in there and you get joy out of and satisfaction, and the work you put in here and you don't get joy or satisfaction?
Well, maybe it's as basic as just being recognised. I mean, the thing is, like just recently, this mother who I introduced, and the child who I introduced to the caregiver, like when I was taking them home, the mother was just so thankful to me, and you know, and told me how grateful she was. And so maybe it's just being acknowledged. I don't know.
So sort of recognition is sort of quite important for you to make you feel good from other people.
I'm afraid so. And I can't help thinking that that's a kind of weakness that I have to kind of, why should it, I do feel, why should it be so important to me at my age what people think or what they say, you know? And yet it is important what they say. I like to hear that positive reinforcement for myself. And
you're talking about sort of like the recognition that is important to you. And you've said quite a bit even today, and you said this last time we were talking, a lot of anxiety. And so this anxiety of happening after these meetings or before these meetings, or?
Well, sometimes before. You know, it's a hard thing to judge. Some of it, I think, is just down to hormones and my moods, you know, because sometimes I can feel really confident and go into meetings and such like and handle it and be quite okay. But then other times I'm just not feeling confident, and I haven't been sorted out a pattern or anything yet, but you know, maybe it's to do with what's gone on before or what, I don't know. But sometimes I'm just really anxious, and like I have to go and do a presentation at SIFs, and I'm getting quite anxious about that. And yeah, I don't really know why. I've done other things like that, and it's gone okay. I think one of the things is that I get really anxious because I might perceive something thinking it's gone well, and then I get some other feedback which kind of undermines that. Like, this work with the house parents, I was thinking it had gone quite well, the work that we was doing, but then I find out actually that they're obviously not happy with something, and that undermines me.
Okay. So, you've got that little 5-part model thing that you can use instantly to look at your feelings and that really goes on. But what I think we've got to do is sort of start looking at a plan of action and thought that is going to ease the anxiety a little bit. But I also think that, and there's two ways we can sort of look at this today, is one is the anxiety issue, or the one is the, let's say, self-doubt and recognition issue. And sort of when I'm listening to you, and I've sort of got this weighing like there's some scales up to say the anxiety is a real issue for you, but the self-doubt recognition issue is also important.
But I think it's just two faces of the same coin, because the anxiety is about not being able to do my job and not coming over well and not being professional and not being intelligent enough to do what I'm doing. And so it's related to the self-doubt. Like the anxiety, ultimately, at the bottom of it, is about, can I do the job properly, you know?
So, how long have you been working where you are?
Pardon?
How long have you been working where you are?
3 years.
3 years. And previous job?
Well, before that I was just working as a teacher aide. But that's kind of because a few years previously when I was in social work and to do with my personal life, I kind of reached a bit of a breaking point and got to the point where I couldn't do anything, basically. Not even answer the phone, I was so anxious and couldn't answer the door or anything. But a lot of that was personal issues, and so it's taken me a long time to build my confidence up, and so that's where I started off, just easing into like being a teacher aide and thinking, oh, surely I can do that.
And how did that go?
Well, I enjoyed it, but there were times when I couldn't even manage that. But interestingly, it was during that time that I was actually diagnosed as being celiac disease. And what I hadn't realised is alongside the celiac is because it's an autoimmune disorder, and my thyroid doesn't work either, and I was severely anemic, and all these factors combined, I didn't realise that they had a significant impact on cognitive functioning. And so I was literally at a stage where I would sometimes not be able to add 2 and 2 in this Year 7 classroom, and thought I was just going mental, you know. And so when I was diagnosed and the doctor said, and I was so clouded in my thinking, and the doctors explained, well, that's because of my medical conditions and because I was so severely anemic that my brain literally wasn't getting enough oxygen, that was a big relief. And so from that point is when I started getting better, when I started getting appropriate medications, and but it's, you know, it took a long time, you know, the confidence to build up, but I always made myself do things, and it's only by doing things that you gain confidence, and yeah, so it's continually, I feel like I live in a continual state of tension, because one side of me knows that I'm capable of quite good work and good things, and I push myself to the limit. And the other side of me is full of self-doubt and just wants to cower away in a corner and not face the world.
So what I think we've got to start looking at doing and trying to help is to bring the distance between the two a little bit closer in together. And build off each other.
Yeah, because I do feel like that. I feel I'm two different people.
And one word that you used is, that I heard it, you know, and I don't want to say it because I don't think it's true. But you sit here and say, I'm stupid. And so, who's told you that you're stupid?
Well, my older brother always did, but I guess all brothers do that, you know. But I guess I come from a family where there was no emphasis on education, and I always remember back in the day, when we were 11, we used to do an exam called the 11 Plus in the UK, and if you passed this exam, you went to the clever school called the grammar school, and if you didn't, you just went to the ordinary school. And I always remember I took this form home because your parents had to write on it their choice of schools, and most parents would always write the local grammar school first, just in case their child passed the 11 Plus, and then they'd write the second choice and the third choice schools. I went home and my mother said to me, she says, well, let's be honest, Josephine, you're not really going to pass, are you? So let's not bother putting the grammar school, let's just put the ordinary school down. And yeah, and as it turned out, I was the only pupil in the school to actually pass the exam, and they had to get my mother up to the office to change the form and blah, 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 you know. And so it's not so much that like my mother told me I was stupid or anything, but it was very clear that there were no expectations. Like my mother worked in a factory all her life, and that's what was expected for me to do, you know.
And what did she say to you when you passed that exam?
I don't remember. I just remember, she never liked things, she never liked officialdom. And so anything like going up to the school, she was very anxious, still is, and anything like going up to the school and having to deal with anything official would kind of frighten her, and so she probably made, you know, it's like, oh, now I'll have to go up to the school and blah, 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 what's all that about? And I remember there was a lot of concern, shall we say, about buying the uniform for this other school, which was obviously more expensive than the local school and things like that. So yeah, it wasn't really something that was celebrated.
But yet you remember getting told that it was no point putting the other schools down because we know that you're not going to get there.
Yeah.
And see how powerful growing up certain comments made, because we're so innocent, get taken on board and then they start getting carried through with life. So, but what we've got to do is look at today. You know, there's a lot of ways we can go back and look at the past and help with the past and everything like that. But the priority is, how do we live in today without the anxiety without the self-doubt, without that stress, and as you're saying, being torn between the two people. And so we've got to come up with sort of some simple things first, I suppose. That you know, we can't say, let's go home tonight and there's the big plan on the wall and you're going to wake up and be a changed person. We've got to do things slowly. So, you know, and I've just had some thoughts going through my head, and you know, what we've got to do is probably get some stuff out and just get some ideas out and find out what ideas that you think sound good, that you're quite willing to go for. But it's interesting where I was listening to you speak to say you got a lot of self-worth and satisfaction when there was some feedback to say thank you very much. Thank you for your help. And at other times you go and do stuff and then you feel that someone criticises you or you haven't done a good job because they are questioning a lot of things. What sort of meetings do you have with your boss to discuss these interviews, if we call them, between these different clients of yours afterwards, to go through to say this is what I did, this is what was happening, this is what we put in place? Or do you just come back into the office and say that was done, put it away, until either someone says well done, or
no one says well done, because my work is done. I'm very much my own boss, and the only time I would go to my manager is if I had a difficulty and I wasn't quite sure of what to do about it. I don't get regular supervision from her, and I don't find her, let's say she's not a warm, fuzzy kind of person, you know, and I don't tell her my success stories really, unless it involves her directly in some way. So.
Yeah, I'm just trying to sort of sit here and think about what's going to, what you could implement to try and take some of that anxiety away, and know that you've done the best you can, and it doesn't matter. You know, other people might complain because they don't see what you're trying to do. And so you worked that 5-part model, which made you see how you was feeling. But there's something that sort of similar to that we could put in place so that when you start feeling anxious before you was introduced to, say, sit down and think about it. Or have a little, could be just a little identifier so that you can take with you, you know, to these things, and then say, oh, that's okay, I'm okay.
Yeah, that sounds good, because, you know, be like, well, it's just a bit of a reality check, I suppose, and a bit of a reminder to help keep things in perspective a bit.
Yeah. You know, so, what would you use? What makes you feel good?
I suppose maybe remembering or thinking about the times that I know I've done good work. I suppose, you know, I could reinforce that. As a barrier to to kind of strengthen myself.
But maybe sort of what I'm sort of looking at is maybe having an object that you could center yourself with to remind you who you should be.
What do you mean? What kind of object?